this opportunity to talk to you about the Teaching and the Career Internship class. It's really part of the teaching and training pathway. As you can see, there's 5 elements to it. There's the Family and Consumer Science Life Planning, which is available for students at the middle school. When they come to the high school, there's the Family Studies and Human Growth and Development. Mrs. Deaver teaches those courses, tends to focus more on early childhood development. Teaching as a career, Tiffany Underwood teaches that class. She was unable to be here tonight, so I'm stepping in for her to speak about that piece also. And I do the teaching internship. So these 4 core classes make up that pathway. The Teaching as a Career part is a year-long course. It's typically open to junior students who have an interest in perhaps being teachers. And so Mrs. Underwood tries to immerse them in many different things, such as the best practices of teaching. That includes items such as, just building relationships with students is one of the keys, as we think about building that home court advantage with students. Likewise, exploring social and emotional learning with students. It really kind of connects back to that building of relationships with those concepts. Again, it's able to just go beyond just teaching content, but reaching students. Obviously, there's 3 elements that make up student learning. That's visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. So she works with those students about how to assess those, how to appeal to those modalities with students. And likewise, of course, lesson planning and design. She included some pictures of things that they do. For social and emotional learning, they first look at themselves and where they're at with social and emotional learning before they try to reach out to students. She also sent along some images of some brainstorming activities that she uses with students. So she uses the flip chart paper, puts up a concept, and they sit and brainstorm together some of these concepts. Just some more examples of what they work with. She also included a couple quotes from students that she's had. I think the first one is an important part because it is a class, and there is some I don't want to say tough rigor to it, but there's some rigor to it. But ultimately, students feel comfortable and being able to sit down and discuss and relaxed. And that's one of the keys to this class is you have to work through those problems together. And I really appreciate this student's comment. So here we have a student that figured out that maybe the teaching career is not where they're destined to go, but certainly some of the skills that were shown to them in the class, it can help them in other areas. And that's just as important for herself and for me. I myself do the teaching internship class. This is typically for seniors, so they've gone through the junior training with Mrs. Underwood. These students actually get to take the things from their junior year and go out into the schools and put it into practice. For me, what students are going to be exposed to are the duties and responsibilities of a classroom teacher. I often compare this to when I was teaching my own children how to drive. And so I'd get them behind the wheel and I'd say, hey, let's go to your uncle's house. And they're like, well, I don't know how to get there. I mean, what? And I'm like, how do you not know how to get to your uncle's house? If you've been there once, you've been there 200 times. Well, just because they've been in the car doesn't mean they've been paying attention to the directions of how to get there. And that's very similar to what happens to students when it's time for internship. They've seen teachers all their lives. They've been in classrooms for 12 years of their lives, but they really haven't seen the process of what teaching's really about. This is where they begin to see that teachers wear a lot of different hats. I mean, whether that's planning classroom instruction, which they always think, but how do you deliver it? How do you deal with all those other nuances that teachers deal with every day, from students who with makeup work or students who are having an emotional issue? So there's all those different hats that they wear and hadn't seen before, but now focus upon. Lesson planning for me is more implementing those plans. It's one thing as they're juniors to write those plans. When they actually have to go out into the classroom and put those plans into action, suddenly it becomes extremely real and somewhat nerve-wracking for them. And then we work on questioning methods. As opposed to, in fact, I had to explain to them, Ferris Bueller, anyone. You can't ask those questions and be effective as a classroom teacher, so we have to work on effective classroom questioning. Here's one of my students who was practicing, in fact, Friday. He was going out today to teach his first full lesson at the middle school. And so this was our 3rd day of practicing. He's working with Mr. Thomas, and he was doing two-way frequency tables. And if we practiced it once, we practiced it like 6 or 7 times, and I hope it went well. I haven't heard back from him yet. In addition to those things, we talk about practical things like, just classroom environment, how teachers set up their rooms. How do you arrange desks for students in the room? The language that you use. And I really draw heavily upon my experience with quantum learning. As a facilitator, I try to bring those things and share them with students. How to build student success, how to encourage students to continue to strive to try to put themselves out there, to ask those questions. And of course, even such things as pros and cons of homework. I mean, when is it appropriate? What are you trying to measure with those ideas? I try to be realistic with students. We look at teacher salaries. If they're going to become a teacher, that's something that obviously is an impact on what they're going to do. How to read a salary schedule. So we looked at the Shawnee Heights salary schedule. We talked about, how do you read them? Then they had to go out and find somebody else who's in Shawnee County, their salary schedule. They had to find somebody else who's in the state of Kansas. They had to find somebody else nationally and compare those salary schedules. They came to the following conclusion, which they asked me to share with you. They noticed that maybe Shawnee Heights doesn't have the highest base starting pay, but Shawnee Heights does much better than most districts in rewarding teachers who stay here for a long time. And it wasn't close. So that's really a props to you and the board for what you've done for teachers and teacher retention. We talk about challenges that they're going to face in the 21st century as a teacher. How to incorporate technology as a tool, not the end all, but a tool that they can use to be an effective teacher. And ultimately the rewards of being a teacher. Because that's really where it is. People do this job for a long time because they enjoy what they do. The rewards they get are really in the classroom with those students and seeing student success. For me, the program is young. Our first year was 2019-2020. We know how that ended up. We didn't get the next year because obviously we're trying to distance, and so we didn't do the next year. Last year was our first year back from COVID. It was great. It was the first full internship experience that they had. It was spectacular. I'm hoping to continue that process. Right now, I know that one of my first year students that I had an intern in 2019-2020 is pursuing education. So I'm looking forward to the day my reward for internship is eventually taking people like this who graduate from Shawnee Heights and eventually turn them into people like this who come back to us and teach. Hey, as I close out, I have to give some definite thank yous. Mr. West for organizing the schedules at the high school so these students can get that block of time out of the schools and be able to go do internship. They go 4 days a week. They typically go for about an hour and 45 minutes. They come back to the campus 1 day a week and we sit down together and we debrief and we practice lessons and work with them on questioning. And of course I couldn't do what I do in the internship program if it wasn't for the middle school and elementary school principals for allowing my students to come in, and of course the staff for allowing them to come into their classrooms and get that experience with teaching. I would entertain if you have any questions or need any clarifications. Yes.
I just have a comment. I think that's great what you're doing. I'm a nurse, but I'm also an educator. I didn't get much education, and so it is refreshing to see that kids are going to learn these skills that they can get, and even if you say if they leave or decide not to pursue education, almost every job you're going to be using those skills for something else.
Thank you. Yes.
Where do you end up placing a lot of your internships? Do you tend to spread them out quite a bit, or are they concentrated more in one area over another?
Tend to be middle school and elementary, mainly because it's difficult for a high school student to go to a high school class and teach high school students. That some of my students ultimately want to teach high school, but we cut them in usually into the middle school. So I've had students obviously at the middle school, students at Barryton, students at Shez, at North, so it's been all around.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you to Mr. West and the building administrators that have made this successful. But really, Mr. Appelhans, it's because of you. I mean, year after year, you're always regarded as one of the best teachers in our district, and having them follow you and learning from you is outstanding. So thank you for all that you do for this program.
I go back to Mrs. Flaming's comment, I mean, about had I had some of this, I wouldn't have had to learn it on the fly as a teacher. So for these people, I feel like they're gonna have a leg up when they go in, if they become teachers, or even whatever they end up doing in life. Like most of us, we had to figure it out. And these students are gonna go into college armed with a lot more knowledge than their colleagues who haven't been in the program.
Well, as you pointed out, you're able to share with them the real life, and that's huge. That is huge. And so, and you present it knowing how you are in a way that they definitely learn from it. And it's, it's a great experience, positive experience for them. And, some will determine that this isn't quite for me. And they learn that out early. And as a parent, thank you. You save us money and keeping them not having to be in school for, year after year after year. But no, I really appreciate the program, and I think it's wonderful that we do it, and the successes that we're having. It's only going to get bigger and better.
Thank you.
No doubt about it. So thank you very much.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, Mr. Appelhans.